Senegal. Not much growth there, and much of it is being affected. It's probably one of the most severely hit area by climate change. It's like, the desertification is approaching really fast. And there is so little that grows there, but there's this one ingredient, one crop that just thrives because it grows in poor soil and requires very little water. And that's fonio. Or not it. I saw this crop as an opportunity, being a chef from Senegal, seeing that this grain was like gluten-free and super, super very nutritious. Actually, it has like an amounts of amino acids that are low in most grains. They're called cysteine and methionine, and fonio has them in abundance. It has a very low glycemic index, so it's great for diabetics, people suffering from diabetics. It's very, very rich in fiber, 5 times more fiber than brown rice. So it's a grain that has lots going for it, but most importantly, it restores the topsoil because it has deep roots that stores the carbon dioxide. So it's like mitigates climate change. It slows the advance of desertification. So as a chef from Senegal based in New York, because I have a restaurant in New York City, Teranga. And so I was like, I see this as an opportunity. Chefs, as you know, after we have an audience, people trust us when it comes to food, and in particular in the United States, people were looking for ingredients like fonio. They're fascinated by ancient grains. Fonio is the oldest cultivated grain in Africa. It's been around for 5,000 years.
I just want to give you guys a quick introduction on millets because I'm sure a lot of you might know about it, a lot of you might not know about it. So I think it'll be nice to just talk about it in terms of an ingredient, where is it found and why is it resilient? So I think firstly and most importantly, India is a country which has got so many different kinds of crops. And I mean, the biodiversity is absolutely ridiculous. Like in my kitchen itself, I might have like 130 spices. And every little bit of India and every different part of India, there's a different kind of a climate. And each climate actually gives you different crops. So I think what's interesting to see is from the north, south, east, west, we've got, like I was saying, ingredients. Most importantly, they're mostly vegetarian ingredients. I'm not talking about animal produce. I'm just talking about vegetarian, vegan ingredients, which are very, very high in nutrition and protein. And a lot of it, because of globalization and because of, fast food restaurants coming in, the internet, a lot of things which are very, very local and regional have stopped being consumed by the locals themselves because of this globalization that's been happening. So even my generation never grew up with millets, whereas millets is something which is very, very regional to India. It's something that's been, it's a heritage grain. In Hindi, which is our local dialect, it's called mota anaj, which means fat grain. If you translate it, absolutely, if you want to understand it. And a millet is actually a grain which is resilient because it only consumes about 1/10 the amount of water that rice or wheat would, especially rice, because rice requires a lot more water. But rice and wheat is what is grown as their cash crops, and millets are very, very regional. So different parts of India grow different kinds of...
The ingredient that I chose is Bambara groundnut, and purely because I've had firsthand interaction with the nut. My grandmother, who was a subsistence farmer and very rural, actually grew the Bambara nut and she sold them at the market. So she made a living planting, growing, harvesting, and then selling them. So, for me, it's always been such an integral part of her farmer's life, because every time she grew the nut, every time she harvested, I always got a bag from her. I always got a bag from her. From the time I was a kid, she'd bring like bags to my family, to my home, to my dad's house. And even when I'd left home and I was living, away from home, I always got a bag of Bambara nuts from her. So for me, they've got like that special, there's a special information around the nut for me. And also another thing that I've discovered about the nut is that, it's one of those ingredients that grows It's indigenous to Africa and Asia, but it grows wild in West Africa and in Southern Africa. So it's one of those nuts that really links us Africans. It links the West and the South. So I'm very, very excited to share my recipe with you. It's one of those ingredients that brings protein into our meals. So because the nut is packed with protein, is packed with nutrients, it's one that is almost like a full meal when you eat it. So if you're having maize meal, or if you're having samp, or if you're having sorghum, you would fortify it with the Bambara just to add the protein to the meal. So eating Bambara is almost like a whole meal. So for me, it's one of those really, really resilient ingredients, but that's also packed with nutrients. So I absolutely love it.
For me, so we are talking about seaweed. I'm very lucky where I live. I live on the east coast of Ireland, in Wexford, which is about an hour from Dublin or so, in the countryside. So to the back of me, I've got like mountains and forests, and to the front of me, I've got the beach, 5 minutes in front of my house. So seaweed to me is very accessible. There's plenty of it, and it's always great to go down there. So today at lunchtime, I just went down and I forgot that we're coming into autumn, so the tide had changed. The tide was actually in, so I couldn't get in where I normally go. So I just got onto some rocks and picked what I could get.
You mean you didn't get in the water? Come on, Conor.
No, I didn't get in the water. I'm going to see what we've got here.
Oh yeah, wow. I always look at that one at the top right. It always looks almost like seal skin, doesn't it? It's so tough.
This guy, yeah, it's like leather. So this is like a kelp.
Corn been around for 7,000 years. Mexico alone, they have 600 recipes of cooking corn. Corn is not only cultural, but it's a matter of survival for some people also. Why I say corn is very resilient, because through our history, corn always been there. When there's drought, when there's hurricane, when there's famine, how we say it, because you can store it very well. You can travel a long way without getting spoiled. And even certain recipes that we have can stay a long time without getting
result of years, decades of monoculture, abusing the soil instead of returning or learning from the tradition of agriculture that's being still done in my country and in many rural areas of Africa, which is the rotational way of agriculture. You allow the soil to breathe, you change the crops, you just do it in connection, considering the soil, instead of like imposing a crop because you just want to sell tons of it out of seasons. So those are the reasons why I just decided to create Yolele, which is the name of my company, and package crops like fonio, which were underutilized crops, and open markets for them. As you know, Arthur, when those crops are not utilized, they disappear.
First of all, like seaweed is a superfood. There's no question about that. The vitamins it contains, like 10 different types of vitamins. It's got like magnesium, calcium, it's protein. It's used in modern day today. It is used in a lot of medicines. It's used in a lot of skin care and so on, and probably less so much of food. But food, introducing seaweed as part of your diet is so good for you. And because it does have medicinal purposes, hence that's why it's used as a medicine.
The fastest growing crop, it grows in 2 months and it cooks in 5 minutes. So it's an amazing grain, and I've been working with farmers. I work directly with farmers because my mission is to really bring economic opportunities in those regions. They are the poorest regions of the world. If you go to Kedugu, where fonio is king, you'll notice one thing: there is no youth around. You don't see young people. There's only older people and women. Where are they? They're gone. They're migrating. They're probably trying to reach England right now. Some of them are in France. They think there are opportunities there that they don't have in their places. So making these type of crops, world-class crops, will bring opportunities, and these kids won't have to leave their countries and try to make it to Europe in the worst possible conditions. If you hear the statistics, They are trying to make it with dugout boats, fishermen dugout boats, from living from Senegal, trying to make it to Spain. The statistics are horrible. 2,000 plus people die in the water every single year. So this is something that, this grain and other crops can change. Not only is great for the environment, it's great for our health, but it's also great for the societies where these crops are from, because it can bring opportunities. It can give those kids who are living hope, and no need to go to Europe. They can make it there where they are.
So when I learned about millets, I asked my mother and my grandmother that, why is there this disconnect? Like, why did we stop cooking it and why did we stop eating it? And the reason, there were a couple of reasons. So one of them was that it was not easily available in the markets. Now the farmers had actually stopped growing millets because there was no demand for millets and there was only a very high demand for rice or wheat. And because of that, they stopped growing the millets. And because of that, there was a scarcity. And because of that, people stopped cooking with it. And we never got that kind of nutrition from it. In the last 3 years, I met a lady. She runs a brand where she, gets millets from little villages and she packages it and she sells it. She works with a lot of rural communities and NGOs. And she taught me about millets, and she told me that this is a grain that we've been using and consuming, but none of us know about it. Can you reintroduce it in your restaurants?
Because food is politics, man. But yeah. I get so passionate. Okay, I'm going to be very quick. Senegal was colonized by the French, right? And the French came, colonization was a business, right? The French wanted our farmers, our agriculture, to be growing peanuts at the time. Like, in Cote d'Ivoire, they wanted them to grow cocoa. In other parts of Africa, East Africa, it was tea. The French and the British, you guys know that. Okay, so this is how it went. so the French were in Senegal, but they were also in Vietnam. At the time, Vietnam was called Indochina, right? And Vietnamese had rice, and Vietnamese were processing their rice. And after you process the rice, there's the debris of rice called broken rice, the debris, right? At the time, the Vietnamese would give it for their animal feeds, right? And the French said, let's bring it to Senegal. So the Senegalese farmers would focus on growing peanuts because we wanted peanut oil from those peanuts. And the Senegalese farmers won't think about growing fonio or millet or sorghum, those crops that we don't have any need for us French, we don't use that, and they will eat the broken rice. And they brought the broken rice, and the Senegalese embraced it because we were so brainwashed in thinking everything that comes from the West is best. The French are bringing this, is best. That's fine then, but 60 years after independence, we are still importing that broken rice. Yeah. And we're looking down at products like fonio.
And you know that the Bambara is very resilient. So it grows very well in dry areas also. So even in droughts, you knew you could depend on the nut. It's the one thing that you know for sure it will grow. And people would share it amongst each other because it's literally, because it's packed with protein, it becomes almost like a full meal.
I'm here to tell you, it is fonio. No, I'm sorry guys, but it's fonio. Look, check this out. The fonio, this is how you grow it. There's a nickname for fonio. They call it the lazy farmer's crop.
Lazy farmer.
Yeah. Lazy farmer's crop, because all they have to do is wait for the first rain. Check this out. When the first rain comes, the farmers take their fonio seeds and they barely till the soil. You don't even need to till the soil. And they throw the seeds like this on the ground. They throw it. They don't even, they don't till the soil and plant it in rows and stuff. And then what? They go and sit down and they sleep and they wait for 2 months. And the fonio will be guaranteed to grow even if there is no other rain. That's how drought resistant it is. And and there's another nickname for fonio because of that. They call it the hungry rice, because they know they can rely on fonio when all the other crops fail to grow.